All right, everyone, the trade war is definitely heating up. We've got a new preliminary trade deal between the U.S. and Japan that's extremely helpful for both of us. Japan wants excess U.S. corn, among other crops, that China is now embargoing. Like, China won't buy our corn. We produce a huge amount of corn. We produce so much fucking corn that we liquefy it, put it in all our foods, and we put it in fuel, and we export it as cheap feed to other countries, sometimes at a subsidized loss, ultimately agriculturally. I don't know why exactly we do this. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, and it's sort of built on the centrality of FDR. Ultimately, it's a form of centralization of production for some sort of strategic purpose nobody can ever quite figure out. Kind of like Dust Bowl politics, I guess. Maybe some economists can explain it in layman's terms, and I'll get Chris Whalen aboard to explain why we have to grow so much fucking corn. Why don't we grow something better? Like, corn is okay. Corn on the cob, it's, you roast it off, it's tasty. You can pull it open, you can spread some chili powder inside of it, you can cook it. It can be good, I'm not denying that. But Christ, there's not a whole lot of nutrition in it. Grow some more turnips or something. Grow some cabbage. Cabbage is way better. Non-grain food stock for the win. Well, we've got a new deal with Japan, and this has caused the Chinese yuan to collapse. It's at levels not seen since 2008, right at the height of recession. China is quickly approaching really, really bad boundary for their economy. The U.S. economy right now is having some stuttering going on as well, but as predicted, the Chinese economy is affected way more. China is an exporter. We are their main importer. We are not, China is not the main country we import from. They're number 3. Canada and Mexico are number 1 and 2. China's number 3. A close third, but, distant enough. We can continue to produce and export and import and feed ourselves and have everything that we need at not too much higher a price by working with other countries that can do exactly what China's already doing. India's ripe for growth. India's begging for more factories. Oh yeah, fucking come in here, especially if it's U.S. factories and we're willing to, at least play the game of pretending to care about workers' rights and the environment. Unlike maybe businessmen there in that part of the world. Vietnam is definitely ready for business. The Philippines, all of these other countries, Japan apparently, South Korea. Even Japan and South Korea that are already very well developed, still a good investment to be made potentially there. Whereas in China, here's the problem. Chinese growth is an illusion. This is China's main problem. Their growth is an illusion based on the fact that people keep investing. Part of the reason why they're growing is that people go there to get cheap labor. They put factories in that fundamentally they're not really benefiting China per se, as much as they are just re-importing goods back to the first world, having been made more cheaply there with cheap components. So let's say that I'm a businessman and I have to make computer components. If I make them in the U.S., I'm expected the factory has to conform to thousands of pages of environmental regulations. The workers will unionize, maybe. They have thousands of pages of regulatory rights. I have to pay a bunch of business taxes, personal income tax, this tax and that fee and that regulation. I have to do certain, I can't use certain goods I can't get from certain countries. I'm making very little profit. And that's after Trump has dropped the business tax rate to something more in line with the rest of the developed world. Before it was sky high. There's a reason why the Obama economy didn't add factory jobs. He should drop it further. He should slash it much more. The business tax rate in the U.S., all the taxes in the U.S. should be slashed massively. Fuck the deficit. The amount of additional growth that we would achieve, I do believe we would if we deregulated things more, would more than make up for it. But first, you have to knock China out of the way in order for that growth to happen. Trump is setting the stage for the possibility, assuming that his tax plan was correctly implemented, which I hope it was, for a boom in the United States. That's his now operative strategy. He doesn't give a fuck about what he's doing to China. No, if all those U.S. businesses do end up pulling back to the United States, you'll see a jobs boom here. They'll have to pay more, but Trump will sweeten the deal. He'll just get them to agree to another round of business tax cuts so that the businesses that now can't operate in China will have to get a little bit of subsidization in order to operate here for a while. And there'll be a lot more jobs and they'll be much higher paying. The U.S. economy will boom. And ultimately, China will enter a depression and they'll wither away as a world power. The problem is that the reason why they're powerful is primarily on the backs of foreign investment. What happens is that's what happens if I build a factory in the United States. I have to conform to all those regulations I mentioned. If I go to China, China says, okay, yeah, pump your money in here. Here's a bunch of workers. Do whatever you want, dude. Here, we got like 10 pages of regulatory bullshit. Basically, please don't assassinate your workers. Please try to keep them from killing themselves. Please try to conform to, the basic principle of respect. It's really it, and I can bribe an official. I won't even have to do that. I can go in with a cane and beat my workers over the head. Nobody gives a fuck. It used to be, by the way, liberals used to understand that China was an enemy of liberality. They used to understand that the Chinese government was the most brutally authoritarian in the world for the most part. That human rights don't exist there for the most part. That what happens is U.S. firms will go there and abuse their workers the way that the liberals don't want them to be able to abuse them here. And they'll spew out coal tailings over there the way that they don't want them to do over here. So it's out of sight, out of mind, NIMBY bullshit. A bunch of gated community trust fund liberals in name only that really don't give a fuck about the poor. They don't give a fuck about the economy. It's all about the Benjamins. They're just better at hiding it than the so-called neocons that are basically the same thing. They don't even try to hide it. They're like, yeah, I want to exploit my workers. The liberals like, oh no, those poor workers. I want to exploit them overseas and then import the goods cheaply to save myself some money. You've got to make a lot of money when you're an activist on a lecture circuit making $5 a fucking speech. You know how much my organic tofu waffles cost? Says a hippie trippy Dan as he wanders through his community college campus smoking joints that he promises are also organically grown, but I doubt that they are. Now, it's great that we have a trade deal with Japan. It's good what's happening with China. It's a great reset almost in world economics. It looks like Trump might be nuts enough to press the little red economic doomsday button. We don't know what's going to happen, really. I mean, it could give us a recession, too, but I think it's hitting China 10 times harder. Their currency just collapsed systemically. People were rambling about how the Dow Jones is down. Okay, the stock market's important, but it's not exactly the same as Main Street. We've got an economy in which fundamentally businesses are more able to compete now in the United States than they were before. What you should do is allow Trump a second round of tax cuts. Stimulate the economy even more, and then stick with it. What we should do is pass it. We should mount a constitutional amendment putting a moratorium on new taxes and fees, hold it down to a certain per capita percentile. Instead of looking at absolute numbers in budgets, we should be looking at ratios, but nobody's thought of this genius idea, I guess, yet. Should be no person should pay more than a quarter of their income, their productivity out under any circumstances. That's federal, state, local, various regulations, ordinances, and shit. Everything combined should never be more than at most a quarter of their income, probably less than that. Hell, that makes me considerably more measured than some libertarians. I'm willing to deal with a little bit more abuse in order to centralize things just enough to keep other countries from invading us and making the situation worse, but I don't want my own government to basically have done the same thing. The Democrats are pretending to care again about the deficit, though, which is good. Oh my God, the deficit will hit $1 trillion for the first time. You didn't care about the deficit for the entire Obama administration, and the Republicans don't care about it now. And when Trump is gone, either in a couple of years or several more after that, if he gets a second term, the Democrats, if they get a candidate, they'll stop caring about it on day one, and the Republicans will start worrying about it again. The deficit at this point is a nonsensical boogeyman. Don't even bother looking at it. These people aren't taking economics seriously. So while we're going to be in la-la land and we're going to pretend that it's the mid-1980s again, we might as well enjoy the ride and not worry too much. We might as well just brace for the coming class. Yeah, have some silver, buy Bitcoin or something, I guess. By the way, legally, that's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor or a lawyer or an economist. I have to say that every time, or something to that effect. It's really fucked up. We live in a weird world. By the way, it's kind of surreal at times, but I'm enjoying the ride, I guess. That's about all. Peace out.